Greetings. Thank you for joining another of our online events. This is Caroline Staten. I'm the Director of Transition US. And our aim in these is to provide practical support to the leaders of transition initiatives, those mulling over starting an initiative, and community leaders working on resilience building within their community. So hopefully all of you fall within one or more of those categories. And we want to continue to offer the webinars at no cost, but do ask that you consider making a donation, and we have a donation button at the top of our webpage, transitionus.org. So thank you in advance for all of you that will help us in that way. And before introducing Jon Young and his part one of a three-part series, I wanted just to give a couple of points about what exactly is the transition movement. And the transition movement is a collection of towns, villages, cities, or islands, or universities, or small neighborhood clusters, implementing a community-led response to the pressures of climate change, fossil fuel depletion, and increasingly the economic contraction that I think we're all feeling the pinch of. We call these transition towns or transition initiatives because they're not only towns, and they begin by answering this critical question: how can we make our community stronger and happier as we deal with the impacts of peak oil, economic contraction, while at the same time urgently reducing our CO2 emissions? That's the problem to solve at this time that we're living. There are thousands of transition initiatives around the world in 31 countries, and here in the U.S. there are 90 official transition initiatives in 29 states, and many more who are, again, mulling over becoming one or are well on their way doing the great work of resilience building in their communities. And how it works is that it starts with a small collection of individuals basically asking themselves that critical question. They form an initiating group, begin a series of awareness-raising events, sort of getting the community involved and starting to unleash the creative genius within their own place. As the group becomes larger, it self-organizes into working groups focusing on key areas such as food, transport, energy, etc. Or in my case, in Transition Sebastopol, we have a working group that's focused on emergency preparedness as well. The third phase is really pulling all those groups back into a focus of creating an energy descent action plan for that specific location, and in the process rebuilding local economic businesses and fabrics, starting local energy companies in some cases, many different and new social enterprises, and maybe complementary currency systems as well. And one of the favored things about the transition work and what is delightful to so many people is what we call the cheerful disclaimer, because we don't know if this large global social experiment will work or not. But what we are convinced of is this: if we wait for governments, it'll be too little, too late. If we act as individuals, it'll be too little. But if we act as communities, it might be just enough and just in time. So in a nutshell, that's the work of Transition US, is supporting that work, and that is the transition movement in a nutshell. So on to introducing our guest, and again, part of a three-part series. This is part one, storytelling. Part two is peacemaking on June 14th. Part three is culture repair on July 5th. We also have some other webinars and maestro calls as well on our website under calendar if you're interested in following up on some more of our offerings. So Jon, I'm so delighted to have you with us today. It's just an extraordinary honor to have you on our call. And I wanted to give a few highlights from your very rich biography and trust that you'll fill us in on some salient points that I'm sure to miss. And let me start. Jon Young grew up in Monmouth County, New Jersey, and was mentored from the age of 10 with the tracker, survivalist, and mentor Tom Brown Jr. And I was turned on to Tom Brown's books a number of years ago, and just they inspired and moved me. And I know that work really moved you, Jon. And you spent many years working for Tom Brown's Tracker School as an instructor and a development specialist. And then I know you went on to get your degree at Rutgers University in environmental science, and then began starting mentoring the Wilderness Awareness School shortly thereafter, inspired by both the mentoring work that you did with Tom Brown and by your studies. I know I'm missing a lot of things, but I wanted to turn it over to you and let you begin this fantastic call on storytelling.
Thank you very much. It's interesting to hear that history. Sit here and listen to that. It was so long ago when I was a boy with Tom Brown. That was in the 1970s, 71 to 78, which launched me on a journey of exploration of anthropology and community and understanding culture and understanding essentially my life question, my most passionate question is, what is nature connection? How does it influence a person's psyche, decision-making process, intrinsic values, choices, life patterns, ecological footprint, all of that? Because I began to recognize early on, as I entered college, that the people who had this deep nature connection profile were also the ones who had the lightest ecological footprint by choice. It wasn't like I have to be environmentally conscious, I have to recycle because the law says so. They just know that there's no other way to do it. It's the only way to live. And that became, I think, my deepest passion, and I thank Tom Brown for that early childhood exposure to deep nature connection practice. And I went on from there, as you said, in 1983. I founded Wilderness Awareness School, which was based on essentially models. I began to study models, especially with the Kalahari Bushmen and various cultures worldwide that practice deep nature connection still to the present day. And I said, well, what are they doing with their children and their families and their neighborhoods that really guarantees each generation a deep nature connection experience, thereby creating a culture of people who are voluntarily simplistic in a very authentic and deeply spiritual way without being spiritual or religious externally. They're just, they just naturally fall into that pattern. And so I started launching this kind of best practices research in my years at university, and in 1983 then opened Wilderness Awareness School as an experimental model to actually test this on New Jersey suburban children, which is a very unlikely group to work with. But also, in my estimation, probably the group that needed it the most. Their parents were, a lot of them, New York City workers who were coming home to the suburban bedroom community at night, and so they were very postmodern consumers, I guess you could say, in their behavior patterns, and their children were watching a lot of TV and involved in very organized lives and sports and things like that. And this was really before video games got their hold on things, so they were just starting to show up. They were still mostly a feature of arcades. They hadn't quite made it to the handheld device or to the household computer yet. And so at that time, I began with high school kids at a local all-boys Catholic high school, and I also began working with the local unschooling community, which were families who followed the works of John Holt. And John Holt, he basically had this idea that human beings don't really need to be trained to learn. We're naturally gifted learners, and we're super curious, and we want to learn, and we want to experience learning. And really, what's required for learning isn't a structure called school, but what's required is supportive adults who love children and who provide them with exposure to exciting, inspiring circumstances, mostly other adults who are super inspired to do what they do. and then from there helping them by providing them with resources and opportunities to learn at their pace in the way that they want to learn. And so I was introduced to that in 1983 with the unschoolers of New Jersey, Monmouth County, and I was suddenly mentoring mothers with nursing babies and children from just born to teenagers in this mixed group. And we did a lot of nature play and a lot of work with the high school kids that I was also working with, and we kind of had this combined experience and began experimenting with different models to create community around nature connection, and found from the very get-go that it was a very successful model, and the results we were looking for, which was creating this deep nature connection spirit in the children and families we were working with, was actually taking root. And we were seeing those intrinsic values shaped, not because we were espousing our philosophy, to say, hey, you guys have to think about nature, you have to think about recycling, you have to think about taking care of the earth, you have to think about composting. We weren't really having to say that to anybody. They were drawing those conclusions quite on their own, and all we really needed to do was take a page out of John Halt's book and expose them to inspired organic gardeners and expose them to inspired composting, and we introduced them to inspired permaculturists, and the rest just happened. It was really about building those connections, which created this kind of resilient spirit of awareness, creativity, empathy, and a desire to achieve kind of personal vision and creativity. And I think that was inspiring for me to see right from the beginning. And I can't take credit fully for any of this, because ultimately I was simply implementing models that other cultures were implementing for eons. I just got back from the Kalahari here a few days ago, and I got to spend time again with a community of Bushmen who are still living very close to their original subsistence pattern. And I guess you could say that they have a transition initiative going. They're actually really, really successful at using almost no water and absolutely zero fossil fuels. They're totally working with their local ecosystem. They're entirely surviving off of what nature offers freely. Like they don't garden or I guess in our style, we have kind of an intensive garden methodology in the Western world. But they don't really participate in that. They have a much more sort of egalitarian approach to gardening. They let the plants decide where they want to grow, and if they don't want to grow there, then they don't force them to. They just kind of let it happen. But they also have this way of understanding how to, let me just say, tweak, sort of lightly facilitate what would happen anyway and increase the power of it by working with the systems of nature in a really, coherent and complex and super connected way. So that, you take a half-hour walk with them and you gather very lightly without exerting a lot of energy, and you come back with all this food straight from the earth that was really easy to gather, and we find ourselves sitting around and eating like 7 different kinds of foods, all of which are delicate and delicious, and you feel full and satisfied, and then you're on to, playing games and enjoying yourself and enjoying each other's company and, having a lot of laughs. And then at the end of the day, they're lighting a fire and they're having a dance. And so I kind of look at them as sort of this model of, what would it be like if we, the people living today, could essentially remember how simple life could be, and I think that would ultimately drive, the transition concept to a much deeper place. If people could remember, before there was Monday and before there was Saturday and before there was 8 a.m. and, agendas and things we have to do and bills to pay and an economic system that demands so much of us, there was this simple pattern of living and this simple pattern of loving and connecting with other people and the natural environment, and, all that stuff still exists inside of us. There's this latent, untapped potential in the human being in the postmodern world that just longs to be reconnected to people in a meaningful way, learning to have, a seriously connected and resilient community of people that you trust and love, who would never stab you in the back if you turned your back on them. But that the reality of that is that we don't really have that anymore. You don't really find connected communities. You find people who share a space in a geographic place, each of us living an isolated lifestyle in an isolated personality, based on a lot of fear and concern and who can I trust and who can I trust, and maybe I shouldn't even use the word trust anymore because it's only just a bunch of disappointments, and you learn that through your whole childhood, and you become basically isolated, disconnected, and afraid, and then you live in this sort of, what Thoreau calls a life of quiet desperation. And I look at what we're doing in transition work, and I'm just so excited that it's happening, and I'm just so thankful and so hopeful that this vision is spreading worldwide and that people are actually tackling it and going for it. And to hear you say, Caroline, that there's what did you say, thousands or
there are thousands in the world, 90 in the U.S. and
wow.
Official initiatives worldwide. There's about 370, but 31 countries are involved.
Oh, see, that is so exciting to me. And what it's saying is that there's a return to sanity, at least on the part of a subset of our world right now, where people are actually taking the initiative to say, enough already. Whenever this started, this pattern of disconnection, this pattern of isolation, not one of you on the phone here today can blame yourself or blame anyone in your life for this experience. We inherited it, we were born into it, and it's been around for at least 500 years. And you could basically track it back to the Dark Ages. I always wondered, at what point did this start? At what point did we mass produce isolation and disconnection? Because ultimately, think about a transition agenda based on a Bushman spirit. If everybody in the world had the deep connection to nature and the deep connection to each other and ancestors and self that the Bushmen possess, people would say, of course, the transition agenda is what we have to do. It's a no-brainer. It would be like, yes, of course. So for me, my contribution that I hope to make here today and in this series of 3 talks is looking at models and techniques and methods that can be used to accelerate and enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of deep connection, healing that 500-year-old wound called, whatever we call it, Western progress. I would like to just call it postmodern society, and because it doesn't deserve the rank of culture. In today's talk and in the next 2 talks I'm going to give, I'm going to really be looking at concepts of culture repair and look at model cultures that are very effective and try to help you understand or help us understand more deeply what a culture is meant to do. If transition, the initiative, picks up culture repair as one of its skill sets, it's going to drive a much more fast, efficient, effective transition movement in the region. Any human being that encounters an understanding of culture repair is going to immediately say, yes, I need that. I need that for me. I need that for my family. I need that for my friends. And once that starts to flow, the results will be deeper connection faster. And when deeper connection happens, a more intrinsic shift towards the values of transition will occur quite naturally. So it's what we might call an inside-out approach. It's an inside-centered. Let's start at the center of our being and work on the connection systems. And from there, transition will make total sense as the logistical agenda to adopt. In the same way that when I bumped into permaculture for the first time, as a person who had the blessing and experience of deep nature connection through boyhood, I essentially experienced the cultural mentoring systems that the Kalahari Bushmen enjoy today as a boy, thanks to my mentor, Tom Brown, who in those days was mentoring in that way. He can't do that anymore because he doesn't have the luxury to do that. He now runs intensive courses. But for 7 years while I was with him, he mentored me in this old way of deep nature connection. So, that's the model that I'm really interested in manifesting in all communities worldwide. Let's get those mentoring systems back in play. It doesn't mean you have to give up your modern experience, your modern lifestyle. It just means you're adding another enhancement to your living experience. So for me, when I had that deep connection pattern going, thankfully, I bumped into, first of all the bad news by making the mistake of studying conservation ecology in college, which was a statistical evaluation of the trends in the world and where our world was headed. And it was a very depressing thing to encounter. So when I bumped into permaculture for the first time in the early 80s, I was in the natural foods restaurant business, I said, oh my God, this is the most hopeful thing I've ever seen. Thank God this is here. And yes, I'm adopting this, immediately. So I think that transition will strike people that way if they have connection really strong. Because the moment I heard about transition towns, I breathed this great big sigh of thankfulness. Thank God somebody's actually paying attention and doing something on this level. And my God, American mayors are adopting this when states and federal government won't. That just made me so happy. So, now you know a little bit about me and my mission, and how I'm talking as fast as I can here to get this all behind me. But I'm also using what it is that I'm talking about here today, which is storytelling. I'm right now in the process of being the storyteller and taking all of you on a journey, from gathering roots in the Kalahari to, reckoning with disconnection and the dark ages and the impact of that system on us. And, I promise in my next 2 talks I'll come back and talk more about culture repair, which is looking at the damage done throughout the last 500 to 1,000 years of, westernization, the destruction that had on our cultural systems and the ability for our communities to connect, and how to repair that and put it back in play. And then the other piece that we'll talk about is peacemaking, which is an organized model that basically says, here's some systems to implement in your life, and here's how you hold them in place long enough for where they'll take root on their own and how they'll grow and strengthen families and communities. And both these platforms are very much central to my work worldwide, and there's now communities worldwide that are involved in what we call H Shields cultural mentoring, and additionally, who are being encouraged strongly by the leaders of our movement worldwide to adopt local transition agendas and to really get involved in their local transition work. Because we just see it as completely harmonious and totally synergistic with the mission that we have to bring culture repair to people worldwide. So I'm excited, honored, thrilled. I've scanned down the list of people on this call, and I see a lot of friends out there and people all over the world, from Germany and from all over the U.S., and excited to see you out there, and glad you're on the other side of this call, and look forward to hearing from you, as we get into the Q&A part of the call here. And other people who I haven't met, maybe one day I'll get to meet you too. And thanks for being here. Thanks for hosting this call. And let's rock into the concept of storytelling. And Caroline, is there any questions or comments or anything you want to say before I dive into this technique-rich topic?
Not at all, Jon. I'm just thoroughly delighted. I'm just along for the ride. I'm overjoyed, and this is wonderful. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, super. I guess I was lucky as a boy to have so many influences from traditional cultures alive and well in my life. My ancestors are from Poland, Lithuania, and that region of the world. I had, my mom was the first generation born in this country, Perth Amboy, New Jersey, but the family came over from Poland, and they spoke the language around me growing up. And my mother's cousin, Ronald, who was like an uncle to me, was a great storyteller. And I always observed how, when he stood up to speak, how he could really touch everybody so personally, and he had so much charisma from that ability to touch and connect with the family when he communicated with us. And I always saw that and said, wow, what is that power that man possesses? What does he have? And as a little boy, I can remember seeing, he scares the daylights out of me, but at the same time, I'm completely fascinated by him, and he holds my attention. And I can feel how much he loves me. These are all thoughts that I had watching him. And I thought that maybe what he was weaving was some form of love, and I just know, in thinking back to that time, that I knew that I wanted to be able to do what Uncle Ronnie was doing. And my dad, from my father's side, his mother was from Irish descent, Cecilia McCormick, and they were all potato farmers, famine day people that came over to America during the potato famine, and a couple generations settled, but mostly Irish immigrants staying together with Irish immigrants formed a town called Irish Town, which later became Homedale, which I later moved to. So my family had settled there for years and years on that side, and then they all kind of scattered and moved and went up to the city, Perth Amboy, and then I ended up back in Homedale later in my life and came to discover by interviewing my grandmother that she was actually born and raised there. And she told me what it was like when she was a little girl. Once again, her stories were so rich, and I could really live through her stories. Like, I would close my eyes when she told me stories, and I'd go on a journey with her, and I would see the creeks and the forests and the land that existed only as a memory now, because they were all covered with suburban developments and shopping malls and highways, and life that she described was so far away, yet it was right there. And I felt this yearning and this longing and this aching inside my being when she told the story to find that countryside again, to find that lifestyle that she described again, because she was talking about very much a local economy, local dependency kind of lifestyle. People were farming, they were growing their food, they were sharing food with each other, they were having dances to celebrate the strawberry season, and there was fiddlers and banjo players and singers, and she told me about this childhood, and I lived that childhood in my fantasies because of her stories. Okay, so in some ways you can see that storytelling from my grandmother, my mother's cousin, Uncle Ronnie, and two different lineages, one from Poland, one from Ireland, the storytelling spirit was alive and strong and already creating an influence in me. It was already, in a way, shaping my visions, my dreams. Because storytelling has a way of weaving past the technical details and touching us in our hearts and in our souls, fertilizing our creativity and our hope, and giving, sheet mulching our consciousness and creating fertile soil for possibility in a way that pure technical lecturing just can't accomplish. And, I guess yesterday I was speaking with one of our mentoring people here in our community, and we were talking about that, the difference between the university lecturer and the good storyteller, and how those two skills are really different. Both of them have their place, and isn't there a really good reason to actually cultivate the storytelling skill, which stirs the soul, the mind, the heart, and the being of the individuals we serve and work with, while using our lecturing skills to weave in the techniques and information needed to drive home a skill set or to move something forward. A skilled storyteller who also is a lecturer can move a crowd like nobody else. And if we in the transition movement are here to move our communities, and I hope we are, we really need to look at the skills of successful charismatic leadership and understand that by adopting these skill sets ourselves, we will have a much greater influence and therefore bring about quicker change in our communities. So I see storytelling as one of your best friends, and I don't see a reason why you wouldn't want to take that journey as a storyteller, considering that it's fun. Mm-hmm. It's juicy, it's spiritual, it's alive, it's electric. It just brings a treasure to your being. So on top of that, it'll make you more effective as a leader. So examining storytelling, from the roots forward, I'd like to say that storytelling has some very discrete skills that you can practice and work on your own. It has a nutritive effect on your being. It can be used as a healing modality. It can be used as an inspiration modality. It works on the storyteller as it works on those who are hearing the story. So in other words, it isn't a one-way street. As a storyteller, you are storied. The story moves you and through you while it moves through and moves others. It is a form of energetic dance that creates the same patterns in our being that music creates. When if a number of us get together and enjoy music together that we all willingly come to and love, music has a way of vibrating within us as a collective that has a deeply healing effect on us. Storytelling can do the same thing. Often music and storytelling are combined, and they're at their best when they are combined. So there's many benefits to storytelling, and there's also some very discrete and simple things you can practice to strengthen your storytelling ability. When in 1983 into 84, I met two other fantastic storytellers. I was super inspired by them. One of them was Ingwe from Kenya, East Africa, who was one of the Kenya settlers, and his father was given a low-interest loan from the British government, and they settled in Kenya near Mount Kilimanjaro. And in that region, they had cow farms, and they were growing diverse crops there, and they worked with the local Akamba tribe, but they were some of the first white settlers in the region, so their only available nannies and farmhands and workers to help with raising the children, including Ingwe, who was just a young boy at the time, they were the Akamba people themselves, and so Ingwe grew up with hunter-gatherer nomads as his nannies and babysitters and friends and so on. And the result of that was that Ingwe grew up speaking more Kikamba than he spoke English, and he was raised by the storytellers of the village. And he learned the traditional storytelling style of the Akamba tribe, which he carried into his 90s when he passed away in 2005. But he left a legacy, which was him telling his own life story, and you get to hear his storytelling there on his audio CD called The Spirit of the Leopard. And you also get to hear the stories from the Akamba as told on an audio CD by the great bassist for Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, Victor Wooten. He's the story reader on that. And, you can hear these stories. And I heard these stories again and again and again from 83 until Ingwe's passing in 2005. But the thing that fascinated me about Ingwe and his storytelling was that though I'd heard that story no less than 50 times before, each time I heard him tell it, and the storytelling style that he adopted was a word-for-word kind of memorization style. In other words, the story never varied. You could almost lip-sync with him. And he basically used these same lines again and again. One of them, learn to hear voices in the wind, learn to hear music in mountain streams and bird song, fall asleep at night listening to the call of the owl or the whippoorwill under the stars, and dream dreams with the animals as your dream companions. Dreams so vivid, so real, they will not be dreams, they'll be visions. And I heard him say that really literally 50 times. I never tired of hearing it. And I asked him, Ingwe, how is it that though I've heard your stories over and over and over, they never cease to make my hair stand up, they never make me feel anything but these chills over my body and for tears to come up into my eyes, even though I know it's coming, it doesn't change the emotion, And he said to me, John, that's because Ingwe is a storyteller. I got the gift of storytelling from the Akamba elders, and this is what they told me as a boy. That when you tell a story, you close your eyes or your eyes are open, but you're not really seeing the audience that's sitting in front of you, he said. Instead, you take yourself on a mental journey. journey of visualization where you see the things that you're describing as if you're standing in that landscape. You imagine your feet on that ground, and you feel, you have instead of a visualization, a feelization, I guess, where you actually kinetically relive the memory of standing in that place. And he says you breathe in the rich sense of that earth and that soil, and you listen to the sounds of that place. And while you're doing that, you let your peripheral vision drift out across that landscape, and you see the giraffes feeding on the acacia thorns, and you smell the scented grasses, and you feel the heat of the sun of equatorial Africa, and you feel yourself standing in that place, all while addressing an audience. So you're actually having two experiences at once. You're having this dynamic sensory memory of rich experiences from your life, and you put yourself in those experiences while talking to an audience. And that was the first discrete and clear set of techniques anyone had ever given me about storytelling. And I was completely fascinated because one of the things that I noticed about Yngwe's stories was that he would tell the story. He would not mention the giraffe feeding on the acacia thorns, but the audience would picture giraffes feeding on the acacia thorns as if he had mentioned it. And I found that phenomenon occurring with many people who listened to Yngwe's stories and said, and I'd debrief the stories with them later. I'd say, did any of you see anything while Yngwe was telling the story? Yeah, I saw those classic African flat-looking trees that spread out horizontally with these wide spreading crowns and giraffes' heads sticking up above them. And I said, that's so funny because I always see that same thing when Yngwe tells this story. And I'm very careful to track that he never actually says acacia thorns spreading horizontally with their flat classic crowns and giraffe heads sticking out above him. He never says that in the story. He never utters those words. So therefore, there's some kind of, creative transference occurring, a suggestive pattern that exists in our memory that's stimulated by Yngwe's story. And our inner sense of Africa is awakened, and we then experience that very thing. Now, the other great storyteller was Gerry Brady, and Gerry's still alive. He's in his 70s now. He's from Dublin, Ireland, and he also had that same kind of storytelling ability as Yngwe had. His was often tied to humor, and he gathered stories that make people laugh. But he always gathers stories that connect people to nature. And he loves to talk to people about what a beautiful day it is, and he always engages them with a good handshake, a look in the eye, and then telling a story to them about what's happening right now. So he doesn't actually start with stories of old. He instead will start with a story about what the bird just did 5 minutes ago before the person walked up and how it made him feel. So he'll activate his love of nature through his greeting custom and tell a little miniature story of something that just recently happened that really delighted him. And you can sit and watch him. I was at an event last year that was populated with a lot of people from Transition UK, people from Scotland, Ireland, and England who had all gathered south and west of London out near Worcestershire for an Art of Mentoring course that we ran at a permaculture site. I think it's called Green and Away. That's the name of the place. And there was a lot of people from Transition there. And I watched these people walking down the dirt road through Green and Away in the morning, and Gerry Brady sitting in his folding aluminum chair outside of his tent. And he's sitting there in the morning, and the blackbirds, the European blackbirds, are singing in the trees. The song "Blackbird Singing in the Dead of Night." For Kirsten, my friend in Germany, we're talking about the Amsel. And for those of you in America, you might think of the American robin because they're all close cousins. The Amsel and the blackbird are the same species, and our American robin is basically the closest thing in our country we have to that bird over there. They share the same Latin name. They're both from the Latin name Tertus. So these birds were singing these beautiful songs in the morning, and Gerry would sit in his chair and I would sit over by my tent, and I just kind of observed Gerry. He would watch someone walking down this little dirt lane. And as the person was walking down the dirt lane, their head hanging down, their shoulders slumped, the body language said heavy, unhappy, uncomfortable, sad, or something. Gerry would jump from his chair and speed over there, kind of the way a kingfisher drops on a fish in a pond, And he goes right over to those people and says good morning to them in the most cheerful way, and he takes their hand and he looks in their eye, and I see his hand gesturing up towards the singing birds, and he talks about how beautiful those singing birds are, and isn't it lovely to be here in this beautiful countryside and to have these birds singing such good songs this morning, and did you hear how happy the birds were this morning, he says to them, and listen to them right now, that one bird over there, how he's singing, and how that lifts my spirits, and boy, it's a good day, and what's your name? I'm Gerry Brady from Dublin, and well, it's so nice to meet you, so-and-so, and where are you from? What are you doing here? And how long are you here? And he just immediately engages them. And in this little miniature implementation of powerful storytelling, I see him literally transform the energy of that individual from this kind of sullen, head down, shoulders slumped body language to head up, shoulders back, big smile, beaming eyes, and walking away with a different kind of a step. And I basically made my more advanced mentors from our work worldwide watch him in action because, he doesn't even know he's doing it. It's just a product of a healthy culture. He grew up in a culture where storytelling is still alive and well and where, I don't know, the elders still have the instinct to make people happy and to work on happiness as their kind of instinct, and like the way my grandmother used to. So I've talked to Gerry quite a bit about that, and asked him, Gerry, what exactly are you doing? I can see that you single-handedly, greeted 150 different people during the week, and I swear to you that you raised the overall energy of the event simply by taking a minute or two with each of them and lifting them and making them happy and making them, light in their step. He says, well, Johnny, he says, I've been around the world, he said, and, I've as you know, I've been a bricklayer in all parts of the world, and he said, I've come to recognize, the important things in life, and, because he lost his wife many years ago from cancer, and how that they had such a beautiful life together, and how much he missed her, and, but he used that to strengthen himself, he says, life is short, we don't know how long we're going to be here, and what a blessing and pleasure it is to have beautiful children around us, to have this beautiful nature, and to remember the important and simple things in life, he said, and to make sure that you always have a story about those things ready. You always have something to make someone laugh. You always carry those things and remember the things that make people smile, and you carry them around and you give them away anywhere and everywhere you can. And I thought, wow, what a gift that is, So there's another technique for you, because I have to tell you, I love, as you know, I celebrate the work of transition, and I think it's some of the most important work on the planet today. I am completely committed to helping in this work, and I also observe that the effect of looking at the bad news, the effect of understanding peak oil, the effect of what's going on with all the challenges in our environment today and global warming and social unrest and mass depression and mass hopelessness, this stuff brings you down and it really depresses people. And I am so thankful that Gerry taught me what he taught me and that I got to learn from him these techniques because I go way out of my way to try to give people hope and to use hopeful storytelling, stories of hope, stories of positive futures, and I fill them with humor and love and kindness and goodness, and I just inflate people with this. I go way out of my way because I have come to understand, I've been a mentor for 30 years professionally, which means that there's people out there in the world who I've been mentoring for 30 years. They're relatives of mine at this point. They weren't relatives in the beginning. They were younger teenagers when I was just in my early 20s, and I was working with them those days. And today, they feel like my family, and I'm still in touch with them. I'm still mentoring them. If they need my help, I'm always there for them. I have a very long history with a lot of people who I've mentored. And there's, hundreds of them that I've mentored for 5+ years. A number of them are on the call today. There's, tens of them that I've mentored for 10+ years, and, dozens and dozens of them worldwide. I believe greatly in mentoring. I believe mentoring is our birthright. I believe mentoring is the one of the indicators that a culture is healthy. In the Bushman community, everybody is a mentor. Everyone is being mentored. It's a lifelong birthright. You're born into a mentoring community. You will be mentored till you pass away, and you will mentor until you pass away. You'll have a very conscious and intricate network of mentored relationships in all directions, peers, elders, children, and you will be a co-mentor. There'll be times when you bring gifts to people and they bring gifts to you. And mentoring is a process, it's a style, it's a way of being, and it's a sign of a healthy culture. In the American culture, or I should say the American postmodern society, there's very little mentoring left, and very few people have mentoring memory. They don't really know what it is, how it works, and they've grown up in an impoverished environment when it comes to mentoring. So in my life, I was blessed to have mentors through my childhood, and very profound and powerful mentors throughout my life. I've chosen to seek out and take care of people who are good mentors, to make sure that I give to them so that they would mentor me. And I've done my very best to maintain a mentoring culture around me and my family for my whole life, and plan to until I die. And I think that in having these long-term relationships with people, I've come to see the effect of hopelessness on people's ability to function and lead. And in 1985, Ingwe pointed out to a number of us the absolute danger of having hopeless people, because if they're hopeless, they cannot see a positive future. And if they cannot see a positive future, they'll have no power to lead people towards that positive future. And without the ability to lead, there will not be any motivation, change, or shift in the culture. And so ultimately, in these very difficult times that we live in, with all of this bad news and all of this stuff around us going on that makes us, just basically want to trumpet out the bad news to everyone around us so that they'll become motivated, we have to resist that temptation and instead lightly pepper our inspirational stories with the facts that face us in our time that we live in, constantly reminding people, in spite of the bad news, here's the hopeful story. So as I travel around the world, I gather hopeful stories. And, in the same way that Gerry Brady gathers funny things and happy things and things to lift people up when they're sullen, which I've also adopted into my storytelling platform, I also travel around the world and look for stories of hope where I see powerful things happening in resilient communities, in communities that are effectively restoring their cultural wellness, effectively restoring their nature connection for their children and the adults, adopting and activating permaculture principles in their life and working with the transition agenda. I gather those stories and tell those stories wherever I go, and then remind them that, we have to take some action because we all know, the news is there. We already see the news. It's in the headlines now, what's going on with oil and gas prices and economic despair and, social collapse and food system problems and collapsing fisheries. We know all that's there, and here's what this community is doing about it, and isn't that amazing? Check this out. Look how happy these kids are, and I make sure that I show pictures and I tell pictures and I talk about happy and hopeful stories, because people don't need more bad news. They're already completely swimming in bad news. What they need is a reflection on the bad news that immediately springboards them into hopeful role models, hopeful stories. And if you can live in those stories, if you can practice what Ingwe is talking about, which is dynamic sensory memory, of standing in these gardens, up at Commonweal Gardens there in Bolinas, California, stand there in the gardens with Penny Livingston and see that not only are gardens productive in making food, and goats producing milk, and Penny producing this really amazing cheese, and the bees producing honey, and this extraordinary diversity and beauty in this garden that's there to produce healing herbs and produce flowers and food. But just look how beautiful this garden is, and how happy all these farm workers are that are here, and how much they enjoy being here and being part of this experience. And then being able to tell the story of the gray water systems that are operating and the rainwater collection, and how cool it is that this place is running on so little water, and how many people it feeds, and how much stuff happens right here. We don't have to be caught in these systems that we're stuck with right now. We can be creative and see other ways. So for you as leaders in the transition movement to really be gathering your most hopeful and happy stories, and I go to Germany and I stand in these more modern homes in Germany, and I just look at their roofs made of these wonderful clay tiles and these rainwater collection systems that go straight into cisterns directly under the house, below the basement floor. And I go down in the basement and I look around at this house and I feel how healthy it is, and the non-toxic paints and building materials that were used, and these incredibly efficient, effective central heating systems that use hot water, and how well insulated the homes are, and how out in the farm fields not only are they growing food and growing energy, they have solar panels and wind generation all happening in the same places. And I see these tiny little cars and these extraordinary systems that the country has developed and emerged with, and I just get so inspired. But I carry those stories with me, and I tell them to other people when they're grousing and crying about energy costs and the lack of this and that in our country, and I just constantly tell them hopeful stories about what's going on in Germany. I won't let up. And when I hear about challenging stories of culture repair and people not connecting to nature, and there's no way to do that, and we don't know how to connect anymore, I tell stories of the Bushmen, and I fill them with images and feelings of what it would be like to have healthy ecology, and how those people are hands-on, mothers, grandmothers, uncles, aunts, grandfathers, granddaughters, grandsons, walking together in these diverse groups around the landscape, just enjoying their time, lightly tending the wild, looking after the forests and the fields of their region, planting seeds, pulling up roots, breaking the roots apart, putting some back in the ground in different places, just taking that Cat Anderson tending the wild concept and applying it in a lighthearted and fun way that is just so much fun to be part of. I inspire communities, with my stories. I bring them to the Kalahari with me, and I show them what a healthy landscape could be. And I ask them to think about what would it be like to get the local families to participate in those kinds of activities again around here, right here in Bonnie Doon, California, where our forests are overgrown and choked with too much fuel. So when a fire burns through, it's a really dangerous wildfire that, could threaten life and property. Well, hey, what if we adopted our local forests again and wandered around and gathered that brush and those dead sticks and brought them home instead and did stuff with them, in a permaculture spirit, used them for heating in our homes, and, use our rocket stove, like I have in my house, rocket mass heater that uses so much less wood than the conventional wood stove and heats so much more efficiently and effectively in a natural building way. And I tell stories like that, and I talk about what my family's doing and what we're doing intergenerationally in our communities. And I just gather these stories and I put them in my basket, and I use them to spread hope wherever I go, and also at the same time, not to give false hope, because I'm not trying to say let's all be flowery and happy in spite of the statistics that stare us down. What I'm saying is that hope is a necessary nutrient for leaders to operate effectively. And if, we're depressed with news, or our communities are depressed with news, and there's no hope, it doesn't matter how many techniques and ideas we throw at them. It doesn't matter how many lectures we give that actually, point out how many different ways we're going to die from the collapse of our society. It's not going to change anything. Instead, it's going to cause, an arrest. They're basically going to become paralyzed and frozen. And this was proven by the the people who innocently started the environmental education movement. When they first started the environmental ed movement, they saw the consumer patterns of Americans, and they said, "Oh my God, we're destroying and toxifying our environment." And look at Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring. One day we'll all wake up and there will be no dawn cars because the birds will all be dead. And we need to spread that message. We need to tell people what's happening to our oceans. We need to tell them what's happening to our landscapes. We need to tell them what's going on with DDT and the ecology. And what that's going to do is it's going to motivate people to actually take action. And what they discovered, decades later, the environmental education movement kind of had grown up, and there was people with 10, 20, 30 years experience looking back at their history, and they said, how have we done? We set this agenda in the 60s. How are we doing? Have we met our agenda? Are we effective or not? And what they discovered, to their dismay, was that they had actually succeeded in creating a lot of hopeless children who had become cynical and sad and were less connected to nature than ever before, and were not necessarily more prone to recycling and looking after nature. In fact, were less prone to. They had essentially fallen into despair and cynicism and moved into this place where, well, why should I bother? There's no hope. And it really echoed what Ingwe had said to me already in the 80s. There's no point in depressing the youth. What we really need to do instead is connect them to nature, give them that deep, heartfelt connection to the creation, to the animals, to the plants, to the water, to the air, and they will naturally want to take care of them. They will nurture and care for what they love. So by connecting them to something, they'll fall in love with it. So let's connect them. And this became the mission for my storytelling. I'm going to gather stories of connection, stories of love, stories of intrinsic value shifts based on culture repair, and then stories of models for living that will bring people into the vision of what Rob Hopkins has inspired so far around the world. The vision of a hopeful future based on transition agendas, energy descent and localizing our economy, and again, doing it in a way that celebrates how much fun it is to live in neighborhoods where people are actually potlucking together, where people are actually sharing the work of gardening and tending the wild and restoring fisheries and helping the landscape, and I tell that story regularly in my community. I don't tell it once. I tell it every opportunity I can in many different ways. And what's happening is slowly but surely people who live here are either getting more involved with each other or are moving to the region, buying houses when they become available. And there's, each time I turn around, I go away for a couple of weeks and come back home, there's more stuff being implemented organically and naturally by my community. So, what's happening now is that there's at least 4 nights a week now where families are sharing cooking meals together, and gardens are being handled together. People are gardening together, they're growing food together, they're harvesting together, they're making jams and putting up preserves together, they're teaching each other techniques, there's reskilling going on. There's a spontaneous reskilling workshop happening now every Saturday in my neighborhood, and all the kids are learning various skills, that are necessary for localizing and living, closer to the immediate needs of your family subsistence. And, this stuff is all happening because of storytelling. I can actually point to each person in the community who's actively involved, and I can tell you what audience they were in. I can tell you the look on their face before, during, and after the storytelling. I can tell you how they got activated. I can tell you how they got re-inspired and how they can just inspire each other, how they're sharing resources and rethinking their life patterns as a result of storytelling. And it's no mystery. I just want you to really to see and feel that. That it is a very effective tool. There's a lot of good storytelling models out there. you all love stories. You all love storytelling. You love listening to stories. You love when people are good storytellers. And all of us as human beings are designed to be storytellers. All of us are designed to regenerate our culture and give hope to the next generation through stories. So, I encourage you now to just gather your stories that make people laugh, that make people smile, stories of hope, stories of adoption of transition, stories of resilient communities rebounding with happiness and excitement because the quality of life is improving, because they are localizing. And just gather those stories, find them, tell them repeatedly. Storytelling as a technique is meant to be exercised as a core routine. It is, in the postmodern society, quote unquote, education has fallen into this accepted pattern. I think it's pathological. I think it's a kind of a wound that we've accepted as a society, because I've seen the best of education in the world, and I've seen the worst of it. As an educational consultant, I'm a real critic of what our postmodern Western world calls education. We have been essentially programmed through repeated punishing programming, which we call school, to accept that if a lecture is given once, if information is shown on a slide and a bunch of facts are spewed one time, then the subject is handled, it's covered, it's time to move on. And if you come back and visit that subject again, someone either thinks you're senile, or you don't have anything new to say. You're basically wasting time. Hey, you already covered those facts. Move to the next set of facts. And this is kind of the lecture-based reality of our current educational system. It has value. It's a tool that can be used very effectively when people are primed and super curious about information. They're great at absorbing it. But if you just use information only, you're punishing people. If they're not really primed and curious and excited and super hungry and ready to fill the vacuum with information, giving them information just sort of adds to their sort of dullness, their mediocre presence, And I know this as someone who's both a professional lecturer and a professional storyteller, and teaching at the college level as well, teaching at the Regenerative Design Institute, and teaching worldwide in different community settings. I much prefer storytelling as my tool, and I like to build hunger and get people super excited to learn using storytelling. And right when they're super hungry, that's when I move into lecture mode and then feed them information, because I can see the thirst and I can see the body language and I can see they're ready. And people report that they really remember stuff from my workshops better than they remember from other workshops. And that's not because I'm great. It's just because I'm leveraging a tool called storytelling and using it as part of my dynamic. I have a resource that we published a couple years ago called Coyote's Guide to Connecting to Nature. And there's a whole section in there on storytelling, and that is just full of great tools. But there's also a section in there called the Natural Learning Cycle. And it essentially says, when you're working... Okay, when you're working with people, what you really want to do is start in what we call the east, where the sun rises. We use the 8 directions as an organizational tool because the movement of the sun is easy to relate to. But the east is sunrise, and it's inspiration. And so the oldest story ever told is the story of the sun around the earth day after day. The sun is always telling us a story each day, and it starts by inspiring the birds. Before the birds wake up in the morning, it's dark out, and while the birds are asleep, they're awakened by the biomagnetic pull of the sun, or moving into position in the east as the earth turns towards the sun. And in that very early morning hour, the birds are awakened and they're inspired to sing. And the dawn chorus, which starts in the dark, is one of the most beautiful things to experience. And I like to look at the east as that which inspires us to sing our most beautiful song. And ask yourself, what inspires you to sing your most beautiful song? And when I say that, I don't mean literally, your song, but maybe I do. Maybe some of you just want to sing a song. I mean, literally, what is your story, your voice that you want to send to the world that is your best and your most inspired? And that's your East moment, you know. And it changes, of course. You know, different audiences are going to call for different songs, different times of year, different times of day, you know, different feelings within your being will cause different songs to come forth. But the East is that time of inspiration. So you tell a story that inspires the audience and you warm them up, that kind of gives them an idea of where they're going. Then the Southeast is that time of motivation, and you shift from your storytelling emphasis on pure inspiration to things that motivate. You know, what are things that I can talk about that would actually be stories of people moving and doing in their lives that represent role models and excitement for people to themselves imagine, oh, I could do that. You know, what is a 3-foot toss, an easy little toss for me to hit a target that would get people to want to get up and start walking. And these are motivational elements in the story. So you start with inspirational elements, which are kind of big picture and full of energy that make you want to sing. And you go to things that motivate you and others into action. And then you go towards the technical details. You know, at that point you start lecturing. And that's what, you know, that South represents, the work of the heat of the day where you really need to focus. But that South moment only lasts, you know, for the noon hour, and then you find yourself in the Southwest when the sun moves to that part of the day. That's the time of day after lunch where you get that food coma feeling and you want to take a nap, and you don't really have a whole bunch of inspiration going on. Instead, you have kind of a dreamy spaciness that feels really timeless. And at that time of day, your body really wants to sink into the earth for a minute. So in your storytelling, you go from the technical stuff into the more relaxed and southwesty feeling, you know, late afternoon feeling stuff of your story. And you might even notice if you shift into that yourself archetypally that your audience looks like they're going to start to fall asleep because literally you're moving energy, and the energy wants to flow that way anyway. It's the oldest story ever told, so the body remembers it really well and naturally moves in that flow. It's called the natural learning cycle, and in Coyote's Guide we talk about that and the techniques that go with each of those points on the eight parts of the compass wheel, and that if you design your stories and your presentations paying attention to that flow, you'll find that you move audiences much more effectively than if you ignore that flow. It's a dynamic flow that's very, very effective. Joseph Cornell's book, Sharing Nature with Children, he gets into a little bit of that as well. He talks about flow learning, and he identifies kind of those first 4 points. You know, you go from inspiration into motivation, into technical detail, into rest and integration. And then in the West, when the sun starts to go low, you'll start to see the birds are moving around, the fox comes out of his daybed, the deer start feeding. You know, it's a time when activity returns. So it's a good time in your stories to get active again and to start to wake up the audience and start to build a little energy back in around celebration. And the West is about celebrating the story of the day. Here's where we've been today. Here's where we've been in our storytelling. Now let's celebrate the role models of our community that we want to hold up and shine towards the future generations. So it's the time to celebrate gifts. And, you know, you can stop there in your storytelling right there. You kind of wrap your story in the West. It's always a good place to wrap when people feel hope, inspiration, and a commitment to community. Or you can continue on to the Northwest. The Northwest elements of your storytelling are about remembering lineage, remembering ancestry, you know, and honoring ancestors and honoring contributions of past generations, and then in that moment pausing and thinking about future generations, which then brings us to the North, which is the place of wisdom. It's the place of midnight. It's the place of elderhood. And in that North position, you start talking about what wisdom do we have to activate as a community, as leaders, to regenerate a future for the unborn children 7 generations to come. And that's where you really start, you know, talking about the patterns and overall visions and direct mission of transition town or permaculture, sustainability. Those are all very Northy type agendas, you know. And then into the Northeast is that time before the birds wake up. It's a mysterious time. It's a dreamy time. It's a time of gratitude. It's a time of thankfulness. It's a time of recognition of the mystery. and it's a time to pause for the sacred, just to sit and feel and to be in the presence of the energy that moves in all things. And we call this the natural learning cycle. There's some great tools in Coyote's Guide that talk to you about how to integrate that thinking, that cyclical flow in your storytelling. There's a lot of techniques in the book that can help you with storytelling. So if you want more information, if you want to dig deeper, that's a good resource to start with, Coyote's Guide to Connecting to Nature. There's some great stuff in there. Overall, there's some great activities in the back. If you're ever hurting for something to do with a group of people and you're looking to kind of raise the energy and build a little nature connection into your work, those opportunities are there too. But I also recommend many storytelling resources. Joseph Bruchac has a wonderful series of books on storytelling, and he's BRUCHAC. But there's some great conferences on storytelling happening every year. Storytelling is alive and well as a cultural resource. There's whole societies and communities dedicated to the advancement and spreading of storytelling skill. So you won't find a shortage of that if you open up the web page and Google search storytelling resources, and I think you'll feel delighted by all that is there for you. And there's just amazing storytellers out there. There's just a lot of great storytelling resources that you can find links to through your searches of stories. So don't give up on that. I mean, I'm going to wrap it up now and go into see if there's any questions here from people, and hope that you enjoyed that little mini workshop in storytelling. I see that there's some great storytellers on the call also. I'm glad that you are here supporting this talk today. So, Caroline, would you like to help me facilitate Q&A here?
Carl will actually call on people.
Okay, great.
But I wanted to thank you, Jon, so much. It's been just enlightening, and I'm sure there'll be some good questions. And if people do want to roll off the call now, we will have a recording as well. So, Carl, over to you.
Sure. I'm not sure we shared with people how to raise their hand. All you need to do is press 1 on your keypad, and we can see if you raise your hand, and we will unmute you. And if you have any questions, just press 1. I'm not seeing anybody raise their hands.
I got somebody down there. Tom Haid has raised his hand, as has George Denny at the very bottom.
Got you. So, Tom, go ahead.
Hey, hi, Jon. It's Tom here.
Hi, Tom.
Hi. Listen, it was so good to hear you. You were so inspiring. And I'm just so glad I tuned in. I'm going to pass this on to all my friends. I'm down here in Santa Cruz in the fog, today, kind of stormy day here, and thinking about you and looking out my window at all the birds around in my trees.
Nice.
And with my dog and little plants, I just remember, you just inspired me once again. So I just wanted to really just say thank you to you, Jon, and congratulations for all your hard work, and we love you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom. I love you too, and I miss you. So come visit.
I will.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Michael Blackwell.
Hey, Jon.
Hey, Michael.
Good to hear you, man.
Good to hear you too.
Hey, I thought it might be interesting to pull out the way that the full sensory participation with nature, especially like the secret spot.
Yeah, good call.
You addressed it, cycles into the ability to tell the story and give the images.
Yeah, right. Good call. Okay, so Michael's referring to, if we're going to have that full sensory memory. Michael, are you calling in from Virginia?
Yep.
Okay, so if we're going to be able to draw from full sensory memory as a good storyteller, Michael's reminding me to remind you that means we have to have full sensory memory to offer. So one of the practices that you're going to want to think about is sitting outside a little bit each day, even for 5 minutes or 10 minutes at a time, really activating all your senses, going through something we call a sense meditation, where you activate your ears and listen in all the directions. In the 4 directions, what do I hear? Off to the right, off to the left, out in front, out behind. Close your eyes and really listen. Feel the wind on your skin or feel the sun shining on you. Feel your feet on the ground and try to feel what it would be to remember that later. Smell the smells in the air. Really smell them and describe them to yourself in that moment, and try to feel what it would be like to remember them later. So in other words, activate all your senses in nature as a practice so that you will also turn on those parts of your brain that help you remember later, that full dynamic sensory memory. So yes, Michael, thanks for that. That completes the circuit. A very important point to bring in. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Are there others, Carl? John, do you see others? I'm actually not seeing the screen. So.
Yes, we have Elizabeth Marshall has her hand up, as well as George. But let me get George, because George, he was, yeah, go ahead, George, you're on.
Okay, thank you. This is George Denny. John, very inspiring, all the things that the previous person said. Really enjoy learning all these skills and hearing your inspiration, so thanks again. I'm curious to know, in a quick question where you talk about the ability in storytelling to tell positive stories of hope. And I wondered if there's a source. Don't go to the newspaper, obviously, but occasionally, I guess. Is there a place to go that you could say that there are some you could read and then be able to share with others about communities you're talking about or stories of hope?
Great question, George. Wouldn't we love to be able to say, hey, right here in the media are these channels and these sources that offer hope, and that I guess only bad news sells. Apparently, that's what I keep hearing. Oh yeah, it's just a bad business model to be hopeful, that's bad news. But I do know that there are sources for hope, and there are some magazines that are out there that offer hope. I know I wish I could tell you the names of them. Maybe what we could do is have a follow-up resource here, maybe somehow on the Transition USA site. Yeah, that we could post these periodicals up, because I know I've been exposed to them everywhere I go. But George, for me, I guess I have the advantage of traveling around and visiting communities that are hopeful to me, and so those are my sources. The permaculture movement is filled with hopeful examples. One of my favorite is the greening of the desert in Jordan. If you Google search greening the desert, you'll find a link to one of the permaculture leaders whose name escapes me at this moment. But he's telling a story of how in the desert the salt was rising from the earth because of bad land management practices, and this guy was able to use permaculture to mulch the desert back into life, and the water table returned, and the salt went down, and the plants started growing healthy, and the forest returned, and it's a really hopeful story. And I know that you can find a lot of that within the permaculture movement, where they've applied a lot of the principles that are active in the transition movement to, with 10, 20 years of experience, what's happened later.
Was that a part of the Dirt, the movie video?
It may have been.
A story about a desert thing where they were able to do all those things. Okay.
Yeah, so I wish I could name periodicals. I know that Yes magazine, YES, is a source of hope. I also know there was one that comes out of the Netherlands that I found particularly hopeful. Just so many cool stories, and they just go out of their way to find good news and good people doing good work.
Actually, I remembering now, I should read more carefully my Sierra Club magazine. They occasionally come up with good news.
They do. And one more, George, I want to offer you one more place of incredible hope, and that is a book written by a guy named Paul Hawken, Hawken, and the book is called Blessed Unrest, Blessed, Unrest, Unrest. That guy's perspective on the emergence of global leaders worldwide simultaneously in a grassroots way is one of the most hopeful things you could possibly read. And what that will do is link you to specific stories of hope all over the planet.
Thank you for that. I would like to throw a plug. You know, you're trying to make me think about it. I just read a book this morning. I don't want to take too much time, but there's a book called Earth Light.
Nice.
Edited by Cindy Spring and Anthony Menosas up here in our area, Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area, and it does actually have stories of hope in there. I'll look hard in that one, but if anybody's listening and wants to check out, and you do the same, John, if you wish, Earth Light.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, spiritual wisdom for an ecological age.
Thank you so much, George. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, John.
Okay, great.
And John, what we could do, this is Caroline. We have a listserv. We could initiate the question like, please list your resources of hopefulness, and so then it'll be sourced by the community itself. So we can start that.
Super great idea. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you for that. Now I guess we'll go to Elizabeth now. Elizabeth Marshall.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Hi, anybody that I might know, Elizabeth in Maryland. If my phone cuts off, my Comcast is acting up, and I'll try to call back, but I don't know if I'll be able to get back in. So I hope that doesn't happen. It happened like 4 times while I was listening. So.
All right.
Ode magazine is another one.
That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, I have them sitting right here in front of me, Ode and Yes, while you were talking and trying to think of what those were, and they're both great. In fact, I think I heard of the what is the title of this whole thing? I'm sorry, I'm a little jacked up on caffeine, so I'm not at my best. But you know, what was the movement that we're talking about?
Of the transition movement.
Yes, I've heard about it through those magazines.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
So there is, it's out there. But anyways, I'm focused on a lot of different things, but in particular, I'm thinking about schools, and I've been big on like the bullying prevention and social climate in schools. I have a 12-year-old, and we go to Coyote Tracks, and I'm a social work student, and sorry, I'm a little all over the map here, but to focus in specifically on that, I'm trying really hard to get our county, we just rewrote this bullying prevention policy. The economy tanked. There's all these great ideas. It really does resonate with the kids, but kind of like how to get that piece in there. The whole country is struggling with this crisis. Really, it's a crisis, and I think, that our kids are shooting each other in school, and I think we're sort of at this teachable moment or something collectively with that, and I'm just trying to figure out from my perspective, because I went in there and I was on the, there's things on that policy that are in there because I spoke up,
Right.
And I'm the person kind of in there agitating, saying, hey, this isn't okay. My son's friends had this rumor about them being gay going around. You have to do more. You can't just say, stop that, kids. So I guess I'm not being very clear in what I'm trying to ask you, but I'm just thinking about everything that was said and sort of like the best strategic way to try to get schools to sort of integrate this. I mean, it's about the whole society kind of coming to a paradigm shift, but I think the schools, that's a huge, that's where we educate our children, so it's sort of like what might be a good way in. Am I making sense?
Yes, you are. I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that question, and there's probably not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer, but I just would like to keep it in the realm of storytelling for a minute and just say, in the same way that we can inspire people towards changing their behavior in terms of permaculture and, acting on localizing of energy and energy descent plans and things like that, the same thing will apply in the case of social ills as you're talking about right now. And that Ingwe and I did a lot of work in inner city urban environments with kids in serious crisis using storytelling very, very effectively. But of course the stories have to appeal. So this is something that could just fall into the overall concept of storytelling in general. The stories have to appeal to the audience that you're talking to, and they have to be relevant to that audience. And the stories themselves obviously have to deliver the vision that you're looking to deliver. So, in your case, I think really personalizing a story of hurt, how bullying hurts, for instance, would be the approach that I would take, and I would get myself as the storyteller to the point of tears, and that the audience would also feel that. And then in that story, also the story of how the healing happened and how the culture change occurred to bring it to a much more higher level state of energy where everybody was more satisfied and happy, and people learned the skills of forgiveness, people learned the skills of taking ownership and responsibility for their behavior, people learned about conduct and the impact of negative conduct, and the desire for positive conduct, the desire to feel safe and trusted and supported. And I think, Elizabeth, if you can make it back to our topic on culture repair and peacemaking, I think some of the stuff will come back again and visit us again, and I will be talking about strategies for creating safer social climates that actually create an ecological condition for the favoring of vision and creativity and hope. So I think we'll be able to come back and address that again later. But if I was you, I would just start looking into researching stories of bullying in other places where real reconciliation has occurred and real healing has occurred. Immediately what pops to mind are stories from Gandhi as well as South Africa, in the apartheid healing moment. That some of those stories are alive already in our culture and can be brought to bear on this subject. So study stories that achieve the outcome that you're looking for as models and learn to tell those stories and practice telling them to small circles of mothers and other, concerned people, teachers and parents in general who are experiencing that same problem. And just tell that story and tell that story and tell that story until it gets strong in you, and you'll start to see, a change in culture around you as a result of that. So, as I said before, storytelling is a redundant core routine, and sometimes the same story must be told many, many times within the same community in order to see change occur. So I just want to really emphasize that. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. And let's see, we have one more here. Richard's had his hand up for a little bit there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, this is Richard. I wanted to share just briefly a few additional sources of stories of hope that I have been finding helpful. I have a ton of those floating around everywhere around me, which is very, very helpful. One is called nexttv.com, I think. They send about a little video every day. It's not only stories of hope, it's also sometimes issues, but there's plenty of stories of hope, and it's wonderful if you find the time to watch them, very often practical examples of something. There's TED, Ideas Worth Spreading. There's incredible stuff there. It's unbelievable what people share and what they do, and it goes from everything, any area that you can think of. There's Peak Moments. It's another, they send once in a while little video clips. They are also very practical examples of what people do, very helpful. Paul Hopkins has started something called Wiser Earth. It's not so much a story there. It's a website with organizations and initiatives around the world that he has collected the business card and finally decided to put it all online. It's also free. You can register there, and you can find in any area you're looking for organizations and then check them out. And then they will give you helpful and very inspiring information and stories.
Super. Richard, would you be able to actually get that into the listserv when the listserv starts to happen? Because these are great resources. I'm excited to check them out. Thank you. Because I know we're just about out of time, and I don't want to have us end abruptly. So thanks for offering that, Richard. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I wanted to just also tell you that we have if you check out 8shields.org, 8shields.org, that's the organization I'm associated with. we have an event that we run worldwide called the Art of Mentoring. A lot of these same principles are taught and experienced experientially. We have one coming up in August here in the Santa Cruz region, the Art of Mentoring. And then you could also, if you forget that 8shields.org, you could check out Jon Young, JONYOUNG.org, and link over there from there. But also we'll have one in Scotland, too, for those of you who are over in Europe. I'm not sure if it's full, but that'll be the end of June and July over in Scotland near Findhorn, near Inverness. So you can check that out. And, I just wanted to make sure I said that because I know I always forget to say those things. And also, I really want to encourage you. Some of you have sort of indicated that you're just learning about transition towns now by being on this call. Please, all of you, please check it out. And I'd ask Caroline to to just give people a resource they can follow up on with that, so that we can also get you looking into your local transition town activities. And thanks so much, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jon. And just following up on Jon's request, transitionus.org. Lots of really good resources there. And if you join our newsletter subscription, you'll get some really good stories too. We try to jam-pack that with all the good stuff that the resilience building communities are doing across the nation and around the world, and then the listserv too, which I'm hoping maybe Richard will just start that string. And we want to. Again, this has really encouraged my resolve, Jon, just to really develop the hope side even more strongly. And so there are some good resources there. And wanted to also remind you that Jon is doing Part 2 on June 14th on Peacemaking, and Part 3, Culture Repair, on July 5th.
I'm so excited to do that.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have you, Jon, and just really look forward to the next 2 chapters.
Well, thanks, and it's so nice to see so many great people. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all that flurry of hands at the end there. Everybody raised their hand. I wish we could have heard from you, but maybe next time. And I see so many friends and associates out there doing good work, and thanks for taking time to be with us this morning.
All right. Carl, we're wrapping up here. Anything else?
No, thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to the call next month, Jon.
All right, great. Thanks, Carl. Thanks, Caroline, and everybody for
Thank you
today. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.